Montessori Grandma. Episode 23. Christ as the Center of History.
Christ as the center of history. A Montessori story related to history. Retold and presented by Geeta Vijayachandran. For teachers, lesson of AD and BC is an impressionistic lesson. It can be given when children question or show interest in the timeline. The children can make a timeline in Roman numerals if the class does not have one. The timeline is kept in a roll and rolled from both ends, so the point of Christ's birth is in the center. Christ as the center of history. This is a traditional Montessori story. It is a story that introduces BC and AD using a chart. This story is about how we got a calendar. This calendar is called the Gregorian calendar. Let us listen to the story. Can you tell me what year this is? It's 2023. Oh, I thought the world was much older. Oh, this is so. How did we get this year 2023? About 2023 years ago, something very special must have happened that made us count the year from that date. A very special baby was born. This baby was called Jesus. We still celebrate his birth and we call it Christmas. This was such an important event that it was given a special name, Anno Domini. Anno Domini means year of the Lord. Historians count time from the birth of Jesus. They counted the first year and the second year and the third year and so on. This was a laborious way to count, so they decided to count in hundreds of years, called centuries, which comes from Latin cent, meaning 100. We can draw the timeline. Let us draw a line on the paper, and on this line, we are going to mark the special time that Jesus was born. Remember, in the story of Jesus, there were 3 wise men. And what did the wise men follow? A star. So let's make a star here. We are going to color before this time in green and after this time in red. Remember that special name Anno Domini? That is the name for the red part. The green part is the time before Jesus was born and so is called before Christ. We can demonstrate this by using 2000 bead chains. Spread out the 2000 chains in a straight line on the paper. The vertical line and the place where the 2 bead chains meet should coincide. Each bead represents 10. So 10 beads represent 100 years or a century. Keep labels on the bead bars on either side of the photo to show century. Do you remember how many years make a century? Yes, 100. Remember, they counted in hundreds of years, centuries. We are going to mark off the first 100 years after Jesus was born. That's the first century. What about before Jesus was born? On the left side is the first century before Christ was born. Now, here's the second century after Christ was born. Here is the second century before he was born. Let us continue in this way and mark all the centuries. How can you tell the difference between the time before Christ and after? The time before Christ was born is called before Christ. And instead of writing this out every time, they decided to use the first 2 letters of each word to abbreviate it. So the time before Christ is born is written as BC, also known as BCE. and after the birth of Christ is written as AD, now known as CE. Now we will put an arrow to represent the direction of time. But what is BCE and CE? BCE and CE are the same as AD and BC. That is, BCE is usually understood to mean before the Common Era and CE to mean Common Era. There is a reason why the shift from BC and AD to BCE and CE has occurred. Using the terms Common Era and before Common Era has less of a Christian overtone, which may be beneficial when talking to those who may have a different religious point of view. Another activity that children can do is to locate the different civilizations on a timeline. Here you can find BC and AD written. That brings us to the end of the story of Christ as center of history. There are many more calendars used worldwide. This can be researched by children. Here are some calendars. Chinese have their own calendar, Jewish have their own calendar, Hindus have their own calendar, and many civilizations had their own calendar. Thank you for watching. This is Geeta Vijaychandran signing off.
Montessori Grandma.